Hey everybody, so I'm gonna make a very small video here to discuss about the book that I have been using when teaching linear algebra. It's the classic, very classic Introduction to Linear Algebra by Strang. Here I have the green book, which is the third edition, but I'm under the impression that at the moment there has been a fifth edition of this book, but I don't have it in Greece, because in Greek the translation is only up to the third edition. So very classic textbook. Okay, of course, if you Google Gilbert Strang, you will see that he's a very famous professor. So he's extremely experienced on the topic of linear algebra, much more than I am, of course. I have taught linear algebra for 2 years in the Department of Mechanical Engineering at the University of Western Macedonia in Kozani, here in Greece. And of course, I mean, there are hundreds, probably millions of books about teaching linear algebra at the undergraduate level. So obviously, there are a lot of options. Okay, I think the book by Strang is one of the best options out there for teaching linear algebra. Okay, first of all, it's a huge book. Okay, 700 pages right here, and I think the fifth edition is a bit larger as well. Okay. Um, so very big book. So there is a lot of material to cover. Obviously, you can't cover the whole book in just an undergraduate course. Okay. In my course, I think I go about the first 500 pages. Okay. It is a great book for teaching. Why? Because in contrast to many other books on linear algebra, it offers geometric interpretation of all the notions and ideas that are covered in the book. So as you know, linear algebra, it has a lot of linear systems theory. A times X equals beta equals B. Okay, it talks about eigenvalues, it talks about eigenvectors, because it talks about linear spaces and subspaces and vector spaces, and all of these actually are not just numbers. So, in a lot of other books, you just see, for example, matrix theory. These are the operations. You can do multiplication. This is the linear system. What's a linear system? Alpha times X equals B. You just need to find the parameters X. Well, it's not about just finding some numbers, okay, and some values. Linear systems have a lot of geometric interpretation behind them. Eigenvalues, eigenvectors, vector spaces, and subspaces have a lot of geometric interpretation behind them. And you need to teach linear algebra through their geometric interpretations, not just, some collection of operations, okay? And Gilbert Strang here in his book gives a lot of gravity towards giving geometric interpretations for any, I'm sorry, of the notions that are covered. Okay. So this is why this is one of the best options for teaching linear algebra out there. Okay. I think, especially for engineers, this is the best choice. Uh, Only one downside that I can find, especially if you're from a mathematics department, is the fact that maybe the book could have a couple more proofs inside. There aren't many proofs, there are a lot of exercises, of course, but maybe for some small facts and some small properties, there could have been some additional proofs. But just that's a very small downside to the book, and this is just my opinion. Okay. Other than that, I think it is very well organized book. Okay, so let me give you some description about the chapters. It starts with a very small chapter, which is an introduction to vectors, and then it moves on to the main category, which takes up most of the book, which is the solving of linear systems. Then on chapter 3, it talks about vector spaces and subspaces, which is a very big chapter. So the first couple of chapters here are very big because they cover the most basic parts of linear algebra. Then on the fourth chapter, which is a smaller one, it talks about orthogonality. This is a chapter that I covered very briefly in my course. And then we go more and more towards matrix theory. So chapter 5 is about determinants. Chapter 6 is about eigenvalues and eigenvectors, which is another big chapter. And then chapter 7 is about linear transformations. Okay, so all of these chapters, 1 to 7, go exactly at 500 pages. And this is where I stopped my syllabus in my undergraduate course. Okay, I think this covers the basic part of Introduction to Linear Algebra. But after that, Strang moves on in about 200 more pages, and it has 3 more chapters, which I think are more advanced. One is a chapter about applications, so it has applications in mechanics, in networks, in Markov matrices, in linear programming, so a collection of applications that use linear algebra. Then there is a ninth chapter, which is about numerical linear algebra. I don't expect this to be covered in a class, but this is a very nice additional reading for interested, more expert users. And in chapter 10, it has a couple of information about complex matrices and complex vectors. Okay, so a couple more advanced topics, and then some additional flavor for a couple of pages. It talks about some stuff about MATLAB and some additional flavoring part for the book. Okay, so an excellent choice, very big book. I would expect for an undergraduate course to cover the first 7 chapters and leave the other 3 maybe for some interested users, maybe for some graduate students or whatever. So I think this is a great choice for someone who is a first year student. But if you're a graduate student and you want to freshen up some linear algebra, this is another great choice, especially if you're going towards application and you need to understand, the geometry behind linear algebra. Okay, so this is another great choice. If you're a graduate, maybe if you're a early researcher, like an early first year PhD student, this is a great choice. Although, if you're working on matrix theory, this is another great book if you're a first year PhD student about matrix analysis that I'm going to cover in another video. Okay, so this is my opinion about the book by Strang. Great choice for undergraduate courses. Of course, as I mentioned, there are 100, maybe million books about linear algebra. So if you have other options, of course, I will probably make another video about a couple of other books that I have around here in my bookshelf. You can also write your opinion, of course. And good reading, great option. Okay, so uh, don't worry about the fact that it's very, very big, because it is a very nice reading. So it goes very fluently. And that's it. Happy reading, and thank you very much.